Okay, so we're going to write down everything but not repeat. So 0, 3, yes, that's a D for domain, and -1. So that's my domain, and then we're going to do the same thing for range. Range is your y values. So my y values are 2, 3, 0, and -2. So 2, 3, 0, -2. Okay, very, very straightforward. It's a little less straightforward when you're not talking about points, when you're actually talking about a graph, because you have to use greater than or less than signs. So it's a little bit harder that way. But right now I'm just asking you to tell me what numbers work. Okay? So domain on this is 1, 5, 0, and we've already written a 5, so we don't have to write another one. Range on this, 3, 0, -2, and 4. We didn't repeat, so we wrote everything. Okay, so that's domain and range. Very simple if you know which one ties to which letter. So D goes with X, range goes with Y. If you mix those up, you turn an easy problem into an impossible problem. Okay, next is functions. Again, I said functions are very, very easy. I'm about to show you the harder definition. You don't even have to write down the harder definition. Okay? So the harder definition is this. A set of ordered pair that assigns each x value exactly one y value. Again, you do not have to write this down. I'm going to show you something different that's next to that bullet point in a second. Okay? A function is where one x value gives exactly one y value. Some one question gives exactly one answer. There's not multiple answers for the same question, same x. Okay? The easiest way to know if something is a function, though, is this. X does not repeat. That's what I want you to write down. X does not repeat. Because if x repeats, then we have the same question, the same beginning, with two different answers. And we're not allowed to. We're only allowed one answer, one y. Okay? X does not repeat. And that is when it is a function. Okay? So here we go. Is the first one a function? Yes or no? Okay? Remember, we're only talking about x's. So the first thing I'm going to have you do is cross out these repeating 4's. Because I don't care if they're repeating or not. They don't matter. So now look at your x's. Do we repeat? So then, yes, that is a function. Okay? Next one. Cross these out. Does x repeat? So that is not a function because there's two zeros. Last one, this is a different way they could ask it. They could say, what would make this not a function? So what is x not allowed to be? So x cannot equal what?
0, -4, or 1.
0, -4, or 1. Okay, because if we plugged any of those in for x, then we would be repeating because there's a 0 and a -4 and a 1 already. We could plug anything else and that would be a perfect function. Okay, so very simple if you can see those points, right? Very, very easy. Yes, sir.
Is the quiz grid going to go into this 9 weeks or next 9 weeks?
Quizzes will not go until next 9 weeks.
Oh!
Because you're able to retake it. So I can't put it in until you're done retaking. You can retake it until the test, so I'm not going to put it in until the test.
Okay, I'm going to retake it.
Like
Yeah, me too.
end of next week, if that.
So if I take it like next week, then you won't put it in unless I retake it.
Today's the last day of the quarter, so yeah, all that starts off next quarter. Okay, let's keep going. So sometimes they just give you a graph instead of some points. If it's a graph, there's another way to do it. It's called the vertical line test. Here we go, write that down. A vertical line test is if at any point a vertical line crosses, that should have an S, I accidentally erased it, crosses more than once, it is not a function. Okay, once we actually draw our vertical line, it'll be easier. So write that down. If at any point your vertical line crosses more than once, it is not a function. One more time. If at any point your vertical line crosses more than once, it is not a function. Or not a function is what I wrote real big. Okay? So if we have any graph at all, any graph, I've got one to the side, I'm going to have a couple more down below. If there's any graph, all we have to do is draw a vertical line and drag this vertical line across the entire graph. So here's a vertical line. If at any point this vertical line crosses two things at once, this graph is not a function. So if I drag this red line across this graph, is there a point where it crosses two at once? Right there. Right there. Okay, this proves that this is not a function because it crosses here and here. It's only allowed to cross one time. Okay? So it can't cross twice or it's not a function. So that right there is not a function. It works the same when it's not dots. So right here we're going to create a few lines and you're going to answer if it's a function or not. So here it's given us an equation. We need to turn that equation into a graph. So we're not going to be exact on our graphs. That's fine. We just need to know generally what the graph's going to look like. So this graph is y equals mx plus b. So our m is 2 over 1 and our b is 0, 0. So we're going to start at 0 and then from there we're going to go up 2 over 1. So there is our line on this first graph. Is that a function? Yes. If we take this vertical line and drag it across it, there is no point where it crosses that blue line more than once. It is always crossing it once. So that is yes. Next one. If I graph this, my starting point is at -1. And then I'm going to go down 3 over 1, down 3 over 1. So my line looks like this. So if I take a vertical line and drag it across this, is there any time where it crosses more than once? No. So that is a function. So again, that is yes. Shh. There's some of you that are going to make this a lot harder than it has to be. This is not hard, but I'm losing you guys. You need to be on task. Okay? Next one. Y equals 8. We should know how to graph that really quickly. It's going to go through the y-axis at 8. It should look like this. If I use my vertical line test, does it ever cross more than once? No. There is no place where that will cross that blue line more than once. So that is a function. Very, very straightforward. What about the next one? X equals 2. What does that line look like? What does that line look like? Up and down. Vertical, because it goes through the x-axis at 2. So that's about right here. If I drag that red line across that, is there a point where it crosses more than once? What about right there?
Yes.
It crosses every single time right there. So it crosses an infinite amount of times right there. So that is not a function because it crosses all the way, every single spot. Okay, so vertical lines are not functions. So that is no. Okay, this last one is something we haven't talked about. So if you get to the homework and it asks you this, you have not seen this. It is a U shape. Anything that's being squared is a U shape. Okay? If I drag my vertical line across that, is there any point where it crosses more than once? No. I didn't draw it perfectly, but it does not go vertical at any point. So it continues to slant out this way and continues to slant out this way forever. So it never does. So that is a function. Yes. Last two that you might see, I just drew them over to the side. What about that circle? Is that a function or not a function? No, because there are tons of places where that crosses more than once. What about this sideways U? No, because it crosses a bunch of times right here, double. Okay, so no and no on those two. Okay, last thing from the day. We're almost done. We're almost there. Last thing for today is something called function notation. Function notation is the same thing as y equals mx plus b, but instead of writing a y, we write this thing called f of x. So you can see that that's y equals mx plus b. Exact same thing. The only reason we write it in function notation is so that we know what we want to plug in. Okay, so instead of writing this, y equals negative 4x plus 5, and then saying, well, let's do when x equals negative 1. So that's a lot of stuff to write. Instead, what we're going to do is write in function notation. And what function notation is this? So this is 3 separate problems. So for our first problem, it says f of negative 1 right here. Okay, between the two things I underlined, what changed? The x changed to a what? Okay, so same thing over here. We're going to change our x to a negative 1. So down here, write this exact same thing, but change all your x's to negative 1s.
Man, you're still teaching?
Okay, f of negative 1 equals negative 4x plus 5, and we changed our x to a...
What's on the line?
That's for the next problem.
It's just separating them.
Negative 1. So there we go. We got negative 4 times negative 1 in there, so that is f of negative 1 equals 4 plus 5. So f of negative 1 equals 9. Does that make sense? Okay? Okay? Does that make sense? All we did was plug this number in for our x. Next time, we're going to plug a 0 in for our x for this one. Okay? You're not solving for x, so this is not a multiplication problem over here. Okay? This is still just y. That's the same as saying y equals 9. There is a way that the homework could ask it. It could ask you to put it in an ordered pair. So what is your x value in this ordered pair? Negative 1. And then what's your y value? 9, because f of negative 1 is the same as y, so it says y equals. So this could be the homework. This could be 2 ways the homework could ask you to write it. If it asks for an ordered pair, then you write it as the bottom. If it asks for an equation as the answer, you write it as the top. So same thing for those last 2. You just plug in the number that it gives you. Okay, do those last 2, and we're done. Okay? So the next one should look like this. F of 0 equals negative 4, 0 plus 5. So that's f of 0 equals 5. So 0, comma 5 should be your ordered pair. Ordered pairs have to have parentheses. All right, that's all I got. I told you today was going to be long. Just happens.